Welcome to the latest episode of the Shell Report, your weekly show through the 2025 season, diving into Maryland football. I am Ahmed Gafir, back again with Ben Strober and Ricky Welch, and the losing streak continues, boys. Maryland football reached a new low on Saturday, falling 35-20 versus Rutgers, and frankly, to me, what proved to be one of the most confusing games in recent memory. Maryland finished the day with 305 rushing yards, the first 300 plus yard run game since Syracuse, September 7th, 2019. Mike Loxley's second game as head coach. Malik Washington, kicked things off with a 73-yard touchdown. Finished the day with 164 rushing yards. Maryland averaged over 10 yards per carry as a team, but the defense just fell short, allowing 485 yards total offense, 256 on the ground. Rutgers wide receiver Ian Strong, 5 catches, 88 yards, 3 touchdowns. Ethan Kaliak-Manis had an early turnover, his first in 3 weeks, and still finished with 4 touchdowns on the day, with 3 of those to Strong, as mentioned. Antoine Raymond, his first 200-yard game in a Rutgers uniform on 41 carries, 1 touchdown. Fellas, I think that we talked about the importance of this game last week. This is a tough one to swallow. Like we said, 35-20 loss in the second straight year that Maryland has fallen to Rutgers. So definitely a concerning loss. We will start with our biggest takeaways and concerns from the game. Ben, why don't you kick us off?
Man, it just feels like watching football in this area, specifically in the DMV. I just keep getting punched in the face. I keep getting back up, and I get punched in the face again. And it just continues every week. Between the Commanders and the Maryland Terrapins, I don't know who thinks tackling is more optional on the football field than these two teams. But Maryland, they just can't tackle, period. That's the only way I can put it. Antoine Raymond goes for over 200 yards. They give him the ball 41 times. Imagine being a running back in a situation where you're feasting in the first half and all of a sudden you don't touch the ball in the second half. That wasn't the case here for Rutgers. Raymond said, "Give me the ball. They can't stop me." Maryland could not stop the guy. I've never seen just such an apparent inability to make tackles, which has been a theme now for multiple weeks. I just don't know what happened to this defense that looked dominant through the first 3.5 quarters against Washington when the team was on the verge of starting 5-0. Something just completely fell off with this team defensively, and it's something that they can't overcome right now. Offensively, I mean, there's a lot of issues on that side of the ball as well. Their best day running the football in such a long time, as you mentioned, Ahmed, and there's still nothing to show for it because in the second half they look anemic again. That's been a theme throughout the years where they fall off a cliff in the second half offensively. This isn't fixable right now, what they have going on, and I'll get more to the predictions and stuff later, but this is not a fixable situation right now for this year.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll be very optimistic with your prediction later, Ben. I can't wait to hear that one. Yeah, biggest takeaway. I know we try to touch on different parts of the game, but I'm just going to have to keep talking about what Ben was talking about here. What has happened to this defense? I mean, I've been crapping on the offense a lot in the last few weeks, and they finally showed a little bit of a different style with the run game, but then the pass game falters. But the defense, it seems to be another theme with the Loxley. I don't want to get on the whole Loxley thing. I know we're going to talk about that later. That the defense starts to become weak, and it weakens as the year goes on, where it looks kind of like it could be a strong suit or even like a half-decent defense. And then they go out and they play Big Ten team week after week, and I don't know if they just don't have the stamina, the strength, the size, the scheme. I don't know what the actual answer is, but it seems to happen over and over and over again. And again, you're in November and teams are running all over you. We're missing tackles. It's just an apparent theme over and over again. And I thought this year could be different. Like Ben said early on, we actually looked like a good defense. We played, Wisconsin's not the greatest, but that Washington offense for 3 quarters, we were kind of dominating them. And we had some great sparks with Sidney Stewart and Zahir Mathis and Daniel Wingate. I know maybe injuries is a factor too, but it seems like every year. And then we can go all 3 levels. The linebackers aren't tackling. The edge rushers aren't getting there. They're pushing our defensive tackles back. Secondary, Jamari Glasser got burnt like so many times. Put a 10 on the toaster scale there. It was, yeah, I don't know what's happening to the defense. So that was also my takeaway. Sorry for a little bit of the rant there. But it seems to happen every every year you look up and it's the calendar's November over here, and my defense is getting pummeled. And Ben, I also root for the Browns, so it gets worse than Terps and Commanders.
Yeah, I think you guys actually both bring up good points, and I think that the concerns on defense. And I asked Locks about the missed tackles. The timing of the question was not maybe ideal, but asked Locks about kind of how do you kind of fix these missed tackles. This is the third time really in the last 4 or 5 conference games that this has become a problem. And there is some truth. Daniel Wingate really trying to battle through right now. Zahir Mathis not 100%. Sidney Stewart was really battling. He got banged up early on. And you make the argument that, of course, who does roster construction fall on? Of course, that falls on up top, management and head coach putting this together. But I think this is really that point in the season where you're starting to see, in November, the depth, those hits, those snaps for those starters that were playing 85, 90% of each games going into November. Second bye week, give Maryland a chance to get some of these guys back to 100% or closer to it. I think that this is kind of where they're struggling right now. That Maryland for the first time in a couple of years, they don't have that depth there just yet. But again, I don't think that this is that's not an excuse. Again, year 7. I think my biggest takeaway is really just the importance on this game. Again, I don't throw around must win very lightly. I think going into it, 500 overall against a Rutgers team that, Mike Locksley, he was transparent and agreed, that these two programs are kind of on equal footing. They kind of routinely find themselves compared against one another. And I think just falling flat against Rutgers 2 years in a row in a gotta have it game, must win, approve it, and letting Rutgers kind of get some momentum. I thought Maryland they went into this game. They had their matchups. Jamari Glasgow, I think he's had a rough couple of weeks. I know he had the interception at UCLA to get Maryland ahead there. But some of these against Nebraska as well. Washington, he's had some bad plays in coverage. So still think the secondary is much improved than he is a year ago. Obviously, I believe it's 16 interceptions now. That those speak for themselves. But for Maryland, it's the missed tackles, like you said, the inability to execute on offense. It's the recurring problems. And Loxley's talked about, just with a young, inexperienced team, it's plugging holes when they pop up. And we kind of joked about it last week, but having to replug the same holes after 2 3 weeks isn't efficient, is not proving to be efficient, is proving to show signs of weakness for this Maryland squad. It's a concerning result. Obviously, as we mentioned, the losing streak continues. That's 5 consecutive losses. Maryland hasn't won since that September 20th road game against Wisconsin. A Wisconsin teams, not to get too far off track here, but a Wisconsin team, I think they finished with 42 yards passing this past week. So Wisconsin team that has struggled all season. Their punter ended up being the leading passer in that win over Washington a week ago, which is unheard of. But nonetheless, I think it's just setting the stage for kind of a second consecutive disappointing season. And like Ricky hinted at, I think that this is, the reason that this was a must win was really, the growing buzz around, where Maryland is, and Mike Locksley in year 7. Obviously, during Tuesday's press conference, there was a pretty awkward but necessary exchange when Locksley was asked if he felt like he was coaching for his job these last 3 weeks. Locksley responded no. Loxley was asked if he felt like he deserves to keep his job. Mike Loxley quickly responded yes. When asked why, not sure it's an answer, but he said, "I am the head coach at the University of Maryland." Obviously, there was an article with Jim Smith as well, where he was transparent about, Mike Loxley will coach these final 3 games, and then Maryland will make a decision. Again, I think it's Maryland with this loss, you're kind of at a breaking point where you kind of have to start assessing how realistic it is. I think just kind of it'll be interesting to see, what Maryland is able to do. Obviously, that buyout right now is 13 million, drops down to 8.5 million at the start of the new year. 65% of it would be owed, 65 of the remaining contract would be owed, and then half of that is owed within 60 days. I think it'll be interesting. I think Mike Locksley, I think there's no secret that a lot of these the money guys, the boosters, and people, the high level people that support him, there are really still a lot of people in his corner. Kevin Plank, that don't necessarily they see the benefit in a year 8, and seeing Zion Ely come in along with this young freshman core, building a supporting cast around them. So it'll be interesting. Obviously Jim Smith, his non-committal answer following Tuesday's press conference is a red flag 3 weeks after, he did an interview with the same outlet backing Mike Locksley during the 3-game slide as well. So I think Maryland's kind of at a crossroads right now. I'm kind of curious to hear what you guys think on just really, where this program maybe kind of needs to go, or if you feel like the conversation is worth having now or at the end of the season.
I think it makes sense that Jim Smith wants to wait until the end of the season, obviously, to evaluate, because when you come in with a new regime, a new group essentially here that's brought in here by Jim Smith as the athletic director, you never want to make any brash decisions early on in the tenure. You give yourself a full year to really evaluate what you have. And if Jim Smith truly, wants what's best for the program right now, and he's truly evaluating, he's going to make the decision on what he feels like is best overall. And I know the money thing becomes a concern. There's a lot of hubbub that's being made about the buyout and boosters. But if you're Jim Smith in this situation, you're doing your best to get the students and the fans as involved as you can. And I honestly, I commend the effort that Jim Smith and the Maryland Athletic Department has put in recently, trying to get input from fans and perspective on things they should be doing to make the game day experience better. Jim Smith showing up to tailgates. He wants to get the students and the fan base on his side, because Damon Evans never really had the fan base on his side for the most part, especially toward the end where things got real ugly with Kevin Willard. So I know they've made a conscious effort to make that happen. I just don't know how this organization or this program can possibly sell an 8th year of this. I don't know. Just given how the college football landscape has changed and the way Indiana has operated, a program that even when Maryland was at its best and Indiana was at its best, never really better than Maryland at all. And then Kurt Cignetti is hired, and all of a sudden they're a college football playoff team. They're better than Maryland has ever been. And I don't know if that's eye-opening to most people, but I think it's eye-opening to me of where this thing is heading. And we've seen the same recurring issues within the program now for 7 years. I just don't know how you can really sell it to the fan base outside of, hey, Malik Washington's coming back most likely, or you're bringing in Zion Ely. I don't know if that's enough to move the needle. And just based on what you see on social media and people you talk to that are diehard fans of the program, they're going to have a hard time accepting Locksley back as the head coach next year if that's the case. It's going to be really interesting what happens this offseason.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And Ricky, I'll just want to interject and then I'll kick it off to you. But I think, you brought up a good point, also about Jim Smith. And I think, again, we forget that, I don't think forget, but just maybe overlook that, he got here July 15th and, he was in the job, before that, in and out, traveling back and forth between here and Atlanta. But I can make a strong argument. There's no benefit in a mid-season change other than other Power Four schools circling your roster and ramping up effort. Because I mean, this has been going on. Schools trying to reach out and trying to see which guys are willing to transfer for the money. Since it's been going on since non-conference ended. So, making a mid-season move never made sense to me. I saw some tweets, during the week, like Maryland needs to make a statement. How is Mike Locksley, in his job? And, I get a lot of it is emotional, but the way that things are set up, the dynamic, there's no benefit to Jim kind of making a decision. And it's hard. I guess it sounds like fool's gold, but technically Maryland does still have 3 games, the opportunity to win 2 out of those 3 to get bowl eligible. Sure, tall task, especially coming off the heels of a road loss to Rutgers. So I definitely mind that, but you're able to somehow get 6. I think, I still think that season finale against Michigan State is winnable, but I think it'll be interesting. But yeah, like you said, I think this past offseason was brutal. And I think recruiting, the care for it continues to decrease year by year because the transfer portal is as important as the high school class is. But I do think that if another season, I think Maryland would have to really, really dive into their marketing plan and their promotion plan for next year. So, Ricky, I'll kick it off to you.
Yeah, I'll try to keep this brief. So I think that you look at it a few ways. Entering the season, there were pretty low expectations around the entire fan base for what the season was going to be. And I think even Loxley was saying, like, oh, I don't even know what my team is yet. And there's a lot of young pieces, obviously, a lot of transfer pieces, pretty much an entirely new team. And I think as the season went along, I think that started to go away, and I think rightfully so. I think first in the new portal era and the just this era of college football, yeah, we're a young team and we're full of transfers, but it's year 7. You put yourself there, honestly, from past year's performances and just I guess the NIL was obviously a big part of it too, but part of it was the head coach not putting the roster together in year 7 to have this expectation. And I think as as the year went on as well, 4-0, and just the way that some of this talent actually looked, I think some better expectations than a 4-win team was warranted, and they may end up being 4 wins. Um, and the whole thing, I think, with all the players that he could keep and that whole dynamic, I think I've came to school in 2019. I'm from Boston. Never seen anyone besides Loxley coach my college football team, and I've seen it now in November over and over again. It's this we've talked about in the first segment. It's the same stuff. I don't. He's had talent in the past in the 7 years he's been coaching, and he has developed some guys to be better. But as the year goes on, I feel like every player gets worse. So how do we trust him to develop the Malik Washington, the Zion Elys of the world, to be better by Malik's junior year? That they're going to be a 9-10 win team and maybe sneak into a playoffs. I just don't think there's the resume for him to develop a team like that. And when he's had some talent sprinkled around his roster, so he's going to have the 3 games. I was a little emotional on Saturday saying probably should just get rid of him now. I kind of agree. You probably should keep him, but he does have the chance to save his job, which I don't even know if he really deserves at this point. Because how many times are we going to come back into the door like the Simpsons thing, like come back in over and over again? How many times are we going to do it? I was firmly keep him, but I don't know. Last week might have been the last straw for me personally. But it seems like they may be keeping him around. We'll see. I'm kind of, it's a lot.
No, that's fair. That's fair. Um, yeah, I think it'll be interesting. I will say if Maryland is able to save it and they go to a bowl game, this whole conversation evaporates, and I don't think
Yeah,
there's
I
any
would tend
debate.
to agree too. I'm a
No.
prisoner of the moment most of the time. So
For sure. But again, I think just coming off that road loss against Rutgers, I think it's a tough one to sell. So we'll see. Again, we got 3 games left. Maryland will go to Illinois this weekend for a 3:30 p.m. kickoff, 2:30 p.m. Central Time on FS1. And it'll be their first matchup in Champaign since Maryland won back in the 2021 season. And obviously, this Illinois team, I think, kind of going into the year, had a lot of expectations coming off the heels of a veteran quarterback coming back, Luke Altmaier, and then that Indiana game, 63-10, 35-10 at halftime. I think that really kind of set them back a little bit. But again, I think it's still a tough matchup this weekend, especially on the road. And since all 3 of us have kind of the same idea, I think it'll be kind of interesting to see, does this team still kind of have that fight? Do they still kind of, have that, showing no signs of quit? Malik Washington, Levain Scruggs, both publicly echoed the same sentiment that head coach Mike Loxley shared, has continued to share really through the losing streak, that his team continues to show up, play for him. Will that translate on the field? I think will be kind of interesting. I guess what's the level of optimism for you guys in order for Maryland to show that this weekend.
Well, I just wonder what fight the team has left because I know this is a constant theme you'll see in almost any sport. When you as a team feel the walls closing in on your program, the walls closing in on the head coach, it makes it very difficult to play at your highest level because there's always going to be an onus put on the head coach in these situations, but the players that have relationships with these coaches, will feel like it's their responsibility that they're put in this position. Like Loxley might lose his job because the players aren't playing well enough. And I know, obviously, as a player, it's tough to think like that. Football is a business, so whether or not it's the player's fault, sometimes the head coach, will take the blame for it in these situations. I just wonder if Maryland's feeling that outside noise because these players, like, they're on social media, they see what people are saying, they hear the fans chanting it at the game. We'll see. They've lost 5 games in a row. They look pretty much non-competitive, honestly, in the last two. And I know it was only a 2-score game, but to me, it still felt like a non-competitive game from a standpoint. So I don't know what they got left in the tank. We'll see. That's all I got.
Yeah, I thought something similar, Ben. It's going to be, Locks was saying at his presser on Tuesday that the team still bought in. I think the players were saying the same thing in their short press conferences as well. How much of that is true is kind of my biggest question. I mean, Ahmed has mentioned it. There is 3 games left. He's winning 2 out of 3, and that's a bowl season, which is as good as it's got around here in a while. So there's still an opportunity to salvage it from the players' point of view. But I just want to see the actual on-field effort, if you will, be there, especially on the defensive side. I think the offense is what it is at this point. There's 9 games. They showed some flash in the run game. That's mostly Malik scrambling around. So I don't really think there's much more to analyze on that side. But we saw a lot from the defense, and I think there could be some injuries again. But I want to see some more effort and hopefully more of that talent shine through. Maybe more effort on the edge rush, and maybe not more effort, but some more results. And just the tackling has to be better. Will they be playing for their head coach? Because it seems
Yep.
like they have to play for him at this point. So that's going to be my biggest storyline for this game and the rest of the season.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think tackling is kind of the main thing that I'm looking at. But like you guys said, just really echoing the same sentiment. And my personal opinion, I didn't travel for Rutgers, but watching the post game press conference and just being on it, and then this press conference, to me, there's never been a time during the Mike Locksley tenure where I felt like I've seen him so defeated. So I think this is kind of a valid question. I think it's this is kind of that week where avoiding the noise is probably unavoidable for these guys. So it'll be interesting to see how they respond. Loxley said the idea of players playing for him and saving his job and hearing this noise, that's not something he wants. So will be interesting to see. As we mentioned, a 3:30 kickoff. Time to time to see if they can pull it off. We'll dive into score predictions, but before we dive into that, we are sponsored by Catalyst Hot Dogs. Catalyst brought the Jersey Dog to the DMV, featuring premium dry aged Black Angus all beef hot dogs made in Maryland, served with handmade toppings including hot onions, relish, and their signature Texas chili sauce. And don't miss their original garlic knot dogs. Catalyst always offers vegan dogs as well as gluten-free buns because Catalyst has food for everyone. Make sure you find them in CQ Stadium at Section 14 and the Xfinity Center in Section 210. Make sure you tell the people a hot dog is a sandwich. And with that, we will dive into score prediction and Catalyst for this weekend's game. Ben, we'll kick it off with you.
I think Illinois wins this one 40-17. I don't see this Maryland team getting any better defensively through the rest of the way in the season. A real big problem stopping the run. Other teams dominate time of possession. They control the game. They control the tempo. Maryland offensively has just looked anemic, to say the least. And if they fall behind early in this game, it'll be over very quick because we have not seen Maryland put up any resemblance of offense in the second half, really, since conference play began. I start to wonder, honestly, as well, and I don't want to get too off topic with this, so I'll just leave it with this. I really don't think the team was challenged enough in non-conference play once again. I've kind of beat the drum on that for the last couple of years, and I know to an extent it's not something they necessarily can control at the end of the day. Like the players can't control that, but they weren't challenged enough in conference play. That's just how I look at it, or non-conference. Sorry.
Yeah, that seems to be a theme recently where they start hot in the non-conference and everyone builds up expectations and it falls short in conference play. But yeah, the catalyst for this game, I know we've been saying the defense has been struggling mostly all podcast here, so I'll flip it to the offense for once. Malik, 98 pass yards, I believe, last week. Is that correct, Tom? I think it was right below 100. Yeah.
Yeah.
So could he steal you one? We've had routine struggles in the Midwest, plenty of blowout loss to Minnesota. I know we beat Wisconsin or whatever they call Wisconsin these days early this season, but continued losses, poor, bad ones in the Midwest for this Maryland side. So I know the defense is probably not going to be able to tackle again. They're probably running all over us. I think it's Beatty is their number one receiver, and he's pretty solid, so he'll probably put up some numbers. And they got another veteran quarterback, Luke Altmaier, who's better than Calic Manis. I think they're similar in age, and I think he's even a better thrower of the ball. So I don't know if I have too much confidence in the defensive rebounding. So maybe Malik can kind of have a bounce back game with his arm, and maybe the run game can stay up a little bit, and maybe we can keep it close, but I don't really think so. I think I'm going 35-14 Fighting Illini.
Yep, I'm not too far from you, Ricky. I'm 34-10 Illinois. I think this week, it'll be interesting to see how this rushing attack is able to respond. If they're able to respond, if they're able to kind of build some sustainable rushing attack. I think this is a week. Obviously Malik Washington is coming off another shaky outing in conference play, but I think this is kind of a game where you kind of need to lean on the ground a little bit, get some level of success. Obviously, you're not likely to match 10 yards per carry like you did last week, which, again, I just think it's so insane that we watched that and Maryland still lost after everything we've watched all year. But if Maryland can kind of get close to that.
Double digits to Rutgers, too.
Yeah, just insane, just really insane stuff, man. But that is the 2025 season. But I think just really leaning on that ground game to kind of control the clock, I think is kind of the big thing. But it'll be interesting. Again, like we said, I think this is kind of a tough matchup. You got senior week next week, so we'll see if Maryland is able to turn the tide. But that will do it for the latest episode of the Shell Report. Again, kickoff is at 3:30 p.m. on FS1 this Saturday. Make sure you stay locked in over on InsideTheBlackandGold.net for all your Maryland news, with Big Ten football wrapping up, basketball season picking up, and recruiting still moving on both ends, with 5-star Baba Olodotin set to reveal his commitment on Wednesday, November 19th.